This is just a one-session class. And the goal of the class is to enable you as parents to learn how to transition from when our children are little, like Dayton, we carry all the responsibilities. And as our children grow, we should transition those responsibilities to our child as they grow and mature, to where when they become teenagers, we're not constantly reminding them of everything they need to do. And this is a class out of Growing Families International. It's the same group that we do Growing Kids God's Way from. And Sherry and I have done the class several times. And it's actually, you can do it at a video-driven class where we just sit and watch a video. But I actually like kind of being more personal into it and actually teaching the class. So you guys all have your handout and your outlines and everything we're going to go through. And our goal for the end of the class is to send you home with the practical ability on how do I teach my child to be responsible for their own actions, for their own behaviors, for their own responsibilities. Because how many know that constantly reminding your child, constantly telling your child what to do, we have to do that in the early years, but as they grow, we have to be able to transition that to them, because while it's acceptable to tell a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old all the time what they need to do and what they're responsible for, it's not acceptable at 13, 14, 15-year-old where we're saying, hey, did you get your coat? Did you get your gloves? Did you put gas in the car? Did you do this? Did you do that? And so as parents, it's on us to learn to transition that responsibility from ourselves to our children. So I'm going to open up in prayer and we'll get into it tonight. Lord Jesus, we come before you tonight, and I just ask you, Lord, to use Sherry and I to teach, God, some things that we've learned throughout the years from you, Lord, and through these classes that we've taken, God. And Lord, it would impart to other parents, God, how to raise a child that is responsible, God, who is a productive member of society. And Lord, that they would be able to transition themselves into young adults and adults that would live with a responsible behavior, God. And Lord, that you would use us as parents to train them and to teach them. In Jesus' name, amen. So in this class and in these sessions that we talk about through Growing Kids God's Way and everything, we are training the moral character of our children with moral values and moral virtues that God instills in us, and we are to instill in our children. The one thing you want to remember as parents is you're always parenting the heart. It's always to the heart. A lot of parents parent behavior, but we are more so parenting the heart, because if we only parent behavior, the behavior is only consistent when we're around, right? And so our children act a certain way because mom and dad are present. And if the heart is empty or the moral warehouse is empty, when mom and dad are no longer around, then it's free game, right? Because I can do whatever I want. So as parents, we want to parent the heart or the moral warehouse of our children and instill in them that right and wrong and responsibility and all those things, to where as they grow and mature, even when mom and dad are no longer around, they have the moral compass or the moral warehouse to understand what's right and wrong, to understand that God holds them accountable for right and wrong, and that we make that transition. Before we get into our outline here, there's 4 phases of parenting. We have the discipline phase, which is 0 to 5 years of age, relatively, something like that. That's a discipline phase. That's where you're going to do a lot of your discipline process, a lot of teaching your children right and wrong, and doing more of the disciplinary actions. Then around 6 or so to maybe 12 years of age, something like that, we move into what's called the training phase. We also call it the why phase. Well, why? Well, why is it like that? Well, why is the sky blue? Why is this? Why is that? And that is more of a transition into you're training them about life. You're teaching them about life lessons. They're moving into a different phase. And then around 13 or so, they move into the coaching phase to 18, something like that. And in the coaching phase, you're more just kind of on the sideline of life. And every once in a while, you can pull them to the side and say, hey, you know, this behavior, you see how painful it was for you? Well, next time, let's make a better decision. Or, you know, you went that way, it didn't work out. Let me give you a little help here. Let me coach you along. And next time, we'll make a better decision. And then ultimately, we move into the friendship phase, which is where all of our children are now. And they constantly remind Sherry that...
I did it.
Friendship phase, Mom. Friendship phase. because Sherry still wants to try to be in the training phase for grown adults, and they're not in the training phase anymore. It's more of a friendship phase. So in the friendship phase, we're just that. Our children grow, they mature, they become adults, and now we're friends, and I can talk to them as friends, and I can experience life with them as friends. And it's hard for us as parents to get out of that training phase and move into the friendship phase. And if you're not careful, you'll have a 30, 35-year-old child that you're still trying to parent in the training phase. And they reject that, and they don't like it, and it doesn't work. The issue for most of us is, in the culture of the day, is everybody tries to start out in the friendship phase, right? In the 0 to 5 years, we try to be our child's friend. We try to negotiate with them. We try to talk to them and reason with them and, talk things out. And you're not going to negotiate with a 3-year-old. It's not going to be productive. You're not going to be able to have an in-depth conversation with a 3-year-old and explain the error of their ways. It's not going to be productive. And so the culture kind of teaches us to start out as in the friendship phase. And then what happens is we get through the disciplinary phase, and we've lived in the friendship phase. And also we get into the training phase, we get into the coaching phase, the teenage years, and we don't like the behavior we're seeing. And so as teenagers, our teenagers start acting out, they start doing things differently that we want, and our first response as parents is to move back to the disciplinary phase, right? We bring it down, we clamp it down. No, you're not going to act like that, you're grounded, you're not going to be with those people, and what we get is rebellion. So it's really important to understand that in parenting, there's phases and there's transitions that we have to make, and a lot of the results or a lot of the actions we see in our children is because we as parents do not properly make the transition to the different phases. And if our child is in the coaching phase and they're 14, 15 years old and we're still trying to move in the discipline phase, they're going to rebel. They're going to reject that. So we have to be conscious of the phases and to move through them. And that's what how to raise a responsible child is. It's a constant transition from one phase to another, and we as parents have to make the transitions. If we don't, we're going to see behavior in our children that we don't like, that we don't want. So how to raise a responsible child. Sherry did the skit last week you guys saw where, is this a familiar scene in your home? You guys need to pick up your toys. How many times have I told you to pick up your toys? Dinner's almost ready. Have you picked up your toys? Oh my gosh, how many times do I have to tell you guys to pick up your toys? Okay, fine, dinner's ready. Just forget it. I'll do it. I'll pick up the toys. You guys just drive me crazy. This is why I'm just so overworked, I'm tired, and then you look at your spouse and you're like, and now I'm tired and it's your fault and you don't help me and we're just running ragged. And really the issue is that we haven't taught our children to be responsible. And so we're carrying all of our responsibilities plus our children's responsibilities. And as frustrating as that is for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, when it becomes 12, 14, 15, 17-year-olds, it's even more frustrating.
Because what you don't correct from the 0 to 5 will be magnified times about 10 in the teenage years. And we address that more in growing kids culture.
So we'll start in our outline here, how to raise a responsible child. And we start with the introduction of, when your children are all grown, what would you like to have raised? An obedient child is the first point. An obedient child or a responsible child. And we're going to do a little contrast here of an obedient child versus a responsible child. While our kids are 3, 4, 2 years old, if somebody said, oh man, what an obedient child you have, that would be such a compliment. Your children are so well behaved. They listen to you. They're so obedient to you. But if a person would walk up and say, what an obedient 14-year-old you have, that wouldn't be a compliment. That would be kind of sad, you know what I mean? We want our kids to grow and to transition. So as parents, we have to ask ourselves, do I want an obedient child or do I want a responsible child? And so in B here, we're going to contrast some obedience versus responsibility. Obedience is required conformity. Obedience is required. When our children are young, the children obey because it's required. You will obey me. When I say don't run across the street, you will not run across the street. We're not going to stand there with a 2 or 3-year-old and have a 15-minute discussion about why it's unsafe for them to run across the street, right? A lot of times when our children are little, it's required obedience. I'm going to tell you, don't run across the street, and that's enough for a 2-year-old. A lot of parents make the mistake of trying to go into a discussion, a 10-minute discussion with their children and explain why. They're too young, they're not going to understand that. So it's okay as parents, as our children are young, it's okay to require obedience. You obey me because the fact is I'm older and wiser and I know more than you do, and we're not going to explain that to them, that's just the truth. And if you run across the street, you're going to get hit by a car, right? So responsibility then, number 2, is voluntary conformity. Obedience is required conformity. Number 2, responsibility is voluntary conformity. So when our children are young, they're required to obey, right? To conform. But as they grow, responsibility teaches our children to voluntarily conform to what we teach them. Number 3, obedience is submission to a person. When our children are little, they obey because we're mom and dad and we know better, and that's okay. Responsibility is submission to a principle. See, again, we want to instill in our children principles, moral values, moral conformity, because one day mom and dad aren't going to be around so much, right? Everybody realizes that all your little kids are going to grow up and be teenagers, and they're going to get their driver's license, and they're going to go out for the first time, and they're going to go be with their friends that you don't really know, you don't have that much knowledge about them. And if they've only been taught to obey a person, and that person isn't there, then it's free will, right? It's on. I can do whatever I want. Woo, I'm free. I see it in the colleges all the time. You know, mom and dad's not out here, so yeah, I'm going to live it up. But if we teach our children submission to a principle, to a moral truth, to moral responsibility, then when mom and dad aren't there, they are governed by their own heart, by their own moral values, by their own moral compass. That's the goal of parenting. If we only teach them to be obedient to me, I grew up in a generation where it was, I'm your dad, shut up, that's the way it is, right? There was no reason why, it was mandated obedience to a person. That's what I was raised in. But responsibility is submission to a principle. So again, we're parenting the heart. Obedience is a virtue unto itself. So obedience is really just one virtue. We can teach our children how to obey, but responsibility leads to multiple virtues. If we teach our children moral truths and moral values, and we help them govern their own hearts, we now have taught them responsibility, which leads to multiple virtues, not just one. You know, we want to teach our kids to be obedient and to abide by the law and, you know, obey those in authority. But we want to teach them responsibility because that leads to multiple virtues. So we're going to talk about in part 2, who owns the behavior? Well, as we talked about, our kids when they're little, we as parents own the behavior, right? Parents are responsible for behavioral outcomes related to 3 vital areas of life. Morality is number 1. We own that. We owe it to our children to raise moral children. I heard a pastor say one time, and I really believe there's a lot of truth to it, there are no delinquent children, there's only delinquent parents. And I have to look at some of these kids that are so disobedient and so delinquent and think, where were their parents at when they were young? And why weren't they taught morality and respect and honor and discipline and, you know, all those things that you should teach your children. So number 1, we as parents own the responsibility of teaching our children morality. Number 2, health and safety. We need to teach our children about health and safety. And number 3 is life skills. Life skills. So parents are responsible until the child is able to take ownership of his or her own behavior. As part of a social obligation, parents must assume responsibility for all mistakes and misdeeds, actions and attitudes until they transfer behavioral ownership to the child. So what's that mean? That just simply means that when our children are little, we're responsible. If my 3-year-old goes out here and throws a rock through the front door glass, I'm not going to take my 3-year-old out and make them work and try to pay for it, right? They're too small. They don't understand. So I am morally obligated. I'm morally responsible for my child at that age. They're just too young to know. They're too young to understand. But as our children grow, as our children grow, we want to transfer that responsibility. If my 15-year-old throws a rock through the window and breaks it, I'm not going to step in and take responsibility for that, right? It's their responsibility. They broke the glass, they're going to do the restitution, and they're going to fix it. That's teaching our children responsibility. And we as parents, especially in this culture today, when we jump in and take ownership of that for a 15-year-old, we are making a very irresponsible young person, right? Well, he didn't mean to break the glass. He slipped on the ice and he fell, and when he fell, he threw the rock, and the rock went through the... It doesn't matter. My 15-year-old broke the glass, so therefore my 15-year-old is responsible to fix it. That's good parenting. But today, we want to make excuses for our children in our culture today, and we want to justify it, and we want to, justify the behavior. That's not good parenting. That does not teach our children responsible behavior. So again, we need to make the transfer. The questions parents must wrestle with is what behavior falls under their management and responsibility, and what behavior should be managed by the child. That's the part of parenting that as they grow, we start transitioning. The learning of new behaviors and courtesies will take place throughout life. It starts with the introduction of behavioral expectation. It allows times for assimilation of the new behavior and then passes ownership of the behavior to the child. Once the transfer is made, it's the child's monkey. You want to grab a couple monkeys for us there, Sherry? So what does this mean? All right, let's just start out with a little kid. How many people are teaching your little child or child simple courtesies like please and thank you? Right? Everybody does that. All right, so how do we do that? How do we teach our children simple courtesies? What's one of the phrases we all use? Mommy, can I have some cereal? What do you say? Say please. How do you ask? What's the magic word, right? So we all do that with our children. Now, if you're continuing to do that, there's a problem here. Especially if you've told them for the 14,000th time, what do you say? How do you ask? So a simple way is to transfer the monkey. The monkey represents responsibility. So a really easy way, we take our children and let's say we're going to teach them a simple courtesy, right? So you would set your child down and you would say, listen, mommy and daddy has taught you that you always say please and thank you, right? Mm-hmm. All right, well, when you ask for something to drink, I want you to ask the right way. Okay, mommy, may I please have a glass of milk? Oh, that's a great job, good job. This is your please monkey. That's your please monkey. And you hold on to it because that's your monkey to carry around. It's not my monkey, it's your monkey. You know how to ask the right way now, so that's your monkey to carry. Now, if Dad would have you ask the wrong way, and you say it the wrong way, let me show you what happens. Dad, I want some milk. How do you ask? See, I just took your monkey back from you. This isn't my monkey, it's your monkey. You're supposed to have this monkey. So see, you need to ask the right way, and then you get to keep your monkey, because it's not my monkey to carry. But that's what we do as parents, right? Let me give you a scenario. You get your kids up in the morning. Hey, did you guys brush your teeth? Okay. All right. Okay, you be my child. Did you brush your teeth this morning? Did you pack your lunch this morning? Thank you. All of them down here. Did you get your gloves? Did you get your hat? Oh, do you have your paperwork for school? You have to turn that paperwork in. And another thing, what else was I supposed to ask you? Oh, there was something about that field trip form. Did you get the field trip form turned in? Now, we as parents are burdened down with all the monkeys, right? This is what we do. And right now, when they're little, when they're 2, 3 years old, 4 years old, they're cute little monkeys. But what happens is they grow, the monkeys get bigger. And I don't have it with me. At one time, we had one of those great big, like, carnival monkeys, And when they become teenagers, all of a sudden, it's a big silverback gorilla that you're carrying around on your back because hey, you got football practice tonight. You know that, right? Where's your cleats? You got your cleats? Yeah, okay. What about your shoulder pads? Oh, by the way, they said you got to buy those new socks. Did you get new socks? And so now we're burdened down with these huge gorillas on our back because our kids are 15 and they have no responsibility, right? Because we've carried it for them. So we as parents have to make the transition to teach our children, this is your monkey, this is your Responsibility, this is for you to pack, it's not for me to pack. And a good way to start is with little kids, 2, 3, 4 years old, is to teach them just simple courtesies. Please and thank yous. That's a good way to start transitioning our children to start carrying the responsibility. So if your child comes in, you're going to have to do it a few times, possibly. Depends on how smart your children are. And most of the time they're really smart and they'll pick it up really quickly, and then they, will just do it out of disobedience. But then that moves into a different area. Yes?
Even if they're little, like, you can start to sign with them, even at a young age to basically.
Yeah, even before they're verbal, you can teach your children please and thank you. You know, what is it? I don't even know what it is. I can't remember.
You need action.
Thank you. Is that thank you? I think that's right. I don't know. Obviously, we don't remember that far back. She used to teach it to all of our kids. So, the monkeys are, and they carry him, and we don't have to call them up when they're 26 and say, hey, do you need mom to come get your laundry for you? No. That's not what we're going to do. We want to teach our children to be responsible to where when they grow and mature and they get out on their own, they have their own monkeys and they pack their own monkeys. Too many times today, I see parents who still pack their children's monkey when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And you've got an 80-year-old woman calling her 50-year-old son, did you remember to pack your lunch for tomorrow, honey? Mommy will come over and do it. Oh, come on. That's not what we want to raise. We want to raise children who are responsible. That is the key to parenting. We want to teach our children to where they learn to pack their own monkeys, and when they get out on their own, they're responsible and they learn how to deal with their own responsibilities. That is the key to parenting. So, how and when do monkeys jump? When parents continue to instruct and remind the child how to behave or how to be responsible after the child reaches the age of accountability for a specific skill, task, or behavior. Mom and dad are taking back ownership of the behavior that does not belong to them. When they do, the child has no motivation to assume responsibility for it. So if we continue to instruct and remind after our children have become old enough to carry it for themselves, we are just taking the monkey back. I'm not going to walk in and ask my 11-year-old if he done his homework for school tomorrow. Just not going to do it. That's their responsibility. That's their job in school. I taught our children, I have a job to do, you have a job to do. Your job is to do your homework. You're 11 years old, do your homework. So what we need is we need to learn how to use a monkey repellent, which we're going to get into. So a good way to, again, just to reiterate this, is jumping monkeys back on us. Let's say we take our 11-year-old and we sit down with them and they can pick this up really quickly. This is what we did. We got 3 monkeys, and each one of our kids had a monkey. And we had their name on it somewhere, or, something another family done that we kind of liked, where they made a monkey jail. And so they had a bird cage, and it was a monkey jail. And if they went through the house and they saw something, let's say my 11-year-old is responsible for the trash, and I walked through and I noticed the trash has not been taken out, I would simply go find their monkey and I would set it in monkey jail, whatever that might be, or the bad shelf, or whatever. And that way, when my child walks by and sees it, he's going to know, or she's going to know, oh man, what'd I forget to do? My monkey's in jail. I got to do something. That's the key to this, parents, is you don't want to tell them, make them think for themselves, because they can, believe it or not, think for themselves, and make them reflect and make them realize, what did I forget to do? Now, if you haven't assigned a task to it, it's not going to work. All right? You got to assign tasks to it. There has to be responsibilities assigned to our children. If you tell your children to get up and make their bed in the morning and clean their room or whatever, then they know that. They know the rule of that. They know to do their homework. They know to get things done. And so we would just simply take their monkey, and like Sherry said, if Cody was in on the computer, typing on the computer, I might walk by and just go on the keyboard and drop it. And instantly he would know There's something I forgot to do. And I didn't have to remind him. I didn't have to pick the monkey back up. We're going to talk about monkey repelling. So example one, we're talking about the jumping courtesy monkeys we kind of talked about. If we're constantly reminding our children after we've set the behavior, say please, say thank you, say please, say thank you, say hello to Mr. Rick, don't look down at the ground when he talks at you, look up at him and say hello. If we're doing those courtesy things, we're not, what do you say when somebody says good morning to you? What do you say? We're not going to keep reminding them of that. There is going to be a time for it when they're little, but by the time they're 4, 5, 6 years old, they should be advanced enough to be able to look up and say hi, or, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to teach them. If we're not careful, the monkeys will jump back. Principle is you never quite transfer ownership if you are, and this is actually a typing error, you never quite transfer ownership if you are always reminding, is the missing word there, they put the slot in the wrong part. You're never quite transferring ownership if you are always reminding your child or teen of what is expected. So we never really give up ownership of it if we're constantly reminding them. And I'm just going to be honest, moms, this is hardest for you. You just want to be a good mom, and you just want to be there for your kids, and you think reminding them is being a good mom. Especially, I raise sons, so maybe I can't speak on behalf of daughters. That's bad for sons. Sons need to be taught responsibility. They need to learn from a young age what it is to be responsible and to grow up and be responsible for their own actions. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean you're a bad mom. It just simply means you're teaching your children to be responsible. Requiring obedience is a monkey on the parent's back. Responsibility is a monkey on the child's back. So under example 2, the jumping personal responsibility monkeys, what do parents need to fix the problem? You need monkey repellent. Monkey repellent. And here is the key to this whole process. The key monkey repellent question is, do you have the freedom to do that? Do you have the freedom to do that? Mom, I'm going outside, I'll see you later. Do you have the freedom to do that? And what that's going to do is make our children internalize the responsibility and think, well, let's see, I cleaned my room, I took out the trash, I picked up all my toys. Yeah, Mom, I do. Okay. Let them go. It frees you from picking up the monkey, and it also instills in our children to internalize and to start building this moral, responsible warehouse. Do you have the freedom to do that? I'm telling you, we lived by this when our kids were younger. Do you have the freedom to do that? You have the freedom to do that? I told my wife I should have just used it on he's in the back of the class, my 19-year-old the other day. I should have told him he no longer has the freedom to drive my car. And I failed. I cleaned it out.
I don't know why you cleaned it out. I wanted to do it. Like you're sitting there doing it.
So I failed. I said, man, I should have used that. I just messed up the other day. I just did it. Do you have the freedom to do that? That is the key question. Do you have the freedom to do whatever you're going to do? And what that's going to do is teach our children to internalize the responsibility for themselves. Do you have the freedom? Mom, I'm going to get on the bus. Do you have the freedom to do that? No, my homework's laying on the counter. Okay, see ya. It repels it. You don't have to, chasing down the driveway. Here's your homework, honey. Woo, don't forget it. I mean, especially to a 14-year-old, right? Do you have the freedom to do that? The principle is freedom does not speak of one's rights, but of one's responsibilities. Do you have the freedom to go do what you're about to do?
So like, what an evening at our house would look like when they came home from school, even starting in like, kindergarten or whatever. Because they'd always send home the folder and then you had to send the folder back. But, so everyone had their little job that they would do and the homework. So when you come off the bus, you knew that you were going to go sit at the bar and you knew that you were going to do your homework. And it was not open for discussion. That's just what you need to do, because as the evening progressed, they get tired and they're playing video games and all this stuff, and it just ended up not getting done. So first things first, let's get our homework done, and they knew that was the first expectation, is to get the homework done. Cody had trash, Christian had dishwasher, and Caleb had his little, I forget what his chore was, but so everyone got that done. And they knew clearly what was expected of them. And I'm not saying if they were sick or, something like that, but we're pretty routine people, so it's like, that's what's expected, that's what you need to do. And they knew that. And then if I would happen to walk in and someone was on something, that's when I would take the monkey over there. I usually wouldn't even, a lot of times after we trained it for a while, I wouldn't even have to say, do you have freedom for that? Because they knew with the monkey.
Yeah.
Cody's monkey had no tail. Christian's monkey was in immaculate shape. Caleb's monkey probably got lost someplace. In a toy box or something, but poor Cody.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this afternoon I told Cody I had to teach a parenting class today, and I was like, we're teaching the monkey class. And he's like, oh God, I hated that monkey. So he still remembers the monkey. So, but what it does is it teaches our children to be responsible for their own behavior. And like Sherry said, you knew in our home, when you got home from school, you do homework for the first thing. That's it. That's what you did. I think we had somebody load the dishwasher and somebody empty the dishwasher.
I fed the dog.
That's right. You fed the dog. That's right. See, he still remembers. Excuse me. But we taught our children that this is what is expected. This is your responsibility. So they knew. Example 3 is, if we're not careful, we'll revert back to the monkeys jumping back to us, to where we get up in the morning. And if you have more than one child, this gets really burdensome. Okay, do you have your backpack? Do you have your homework? Do you have this? Do you have that? Oh, you got skating night or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Do you have all that? And you, Jimmy, you have this and you have that. And before you know it, you as the parent are now carrying about 40 monkeys on your back. It's morning. You get the kids off to school. They get on the bus and you're like, oh my gosh, I am exhausted. And it's because you've been carrying around all these monkeys that are not your monkeys to pack. And so it's 8 o'clock in the morning and we're exhausted, we're fried, we're ready to quit, we're ready to give up because we've been carrying everybody's responsibility, everybody else's monkeys, and it just wears us down. So we need to transfer ownership of the monkeys to our children. Excuse me. So transferring ownership of the heart problems. How do we do this? Well, the goal is for our children to internalize this for themselves, right? So we do something called a reflective sit time. My battery's going dead. It's a controlled opportunity to consider thoughts, actions, or decisions. It is a corrective strategy to help children come to a right response on their own without the lecture. Everybody knows the lecture. How many times do I have to tell you? God, I've been telling this since you were 4 years old, you're 14, oh, it just drives me crazy how many times I give them. It is used to help them morally process and evaluate their circumstance and actions. We want to avoid the lecture. You know what your kids hear when you go into lecture mode? Moms and dads? That's exactly right. Blah, 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 blah. And you think they're listening, and at 3, they're not listening. I've told you, blah, 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 blah. And they're sitting there going, blah, blah, blah. Now what did mommy just tell you? I don't know. That's because they don't know. They shut you off. You go into lecture mode, and it's gone. They don't listen to you at 3. They don't listen to you at 8. They don't listen to you at 17. When you go into lecture mode, they're checked out. They're not going to listen. We want to avoid lecture mode. So the way you get out of lecture mode is you teach your children a reflective sit time. Now, this is not a timeout, okay? This is a time for them to sit down, to gain their thoughts, and to think about what they didn't do or what they missed out on that they need to correct.
At what age do you think it's appropriate to start that? 4?
4, 5, yeah. You easily do it. Now, we're not big fans of sending kids to their rooms. I'm just not. I would much rather have a child take a reflective time out at the kitchen table. For one reason, most of our kids' rooms anymore are like a, sanctuary. They've got TVs and coffee makers and everything else in their bedrooms, and be like, you need to go to your room and think about it. Sweet, I'll be out next week. You know what I mean? But if you set them at the kitchen table, where it's like right in the middle of everything, and everything's going on around them, and they sit there and think about it, it seems to be much more of a time where they actually process it. So when you do a reflective time out, there are two questions that you're going to ask. We're going to skip over to B. The two key questions are, what did you do, and what must you do to make it right? What did you do, and what must you do to make it right? So let's say we've been working with our child about slamming the door when they come in the house. It's just something that popped in my head. You've told them, don't slam the door, don't slam the door. They come running in, they're like, bam! There goes the picture off the wall, and it breaks. And you're like, hey, what? I need you to take a reflective time out. Instead of, how many times have I told you not to slam the door? Now look at this, you broke my brand new picture, blah, 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 and all they hear is blah, 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 blah. Can I go now? Yeah, fine. We just didn't teach them anything. They didn't learn anything from that. The opposite is, hey, I need you to sit down and take a reflective time out. You need to think about what did you do and what do you need to do to correct it. And let them internalize for themselves their own responsible behavior. And until they say, I slammed the door and I broke the picture and I'm sorry, they're not going to get up. Well, I don't know what I did. Well, then you need to think about it for a little bit. But I really don't know what I did. Don't prompt them. It's okay. They're not going to die, I promise. Let them sit there for a few minutes and let them think about it. I'm sorry. Walk away. Let them think. And don't prompt them. Well, it had something to do with, did you hear something fall off the wall? No. Our goal as parents is to reach the heart and for them to learn to process their own moral values and their own moral heart, because we want them to be responsible for their own actions. I need you to take a time out, a reflective time out. I need you to tell me, what did you do and what are you going to do to correct it? And make them think about it. Make them think about what they just did and how they behave and how do they need to correct it. It works really well. It teaches them responsibility for their own behavior. A reflective sit time. We're fans of it. Doing it at the kitchen table seemed to be a good spot. Yeah, something like that. If they're really out of control, you can tell them to clasp their hands together, gain some self-control, and think about what they've done. For whatever reason, if your child is like having a temper tantrum or they're really just freaking out, if you teach them to clasp their hands together and tell them to gain self-control, it like gives them somewhere to put that energy, and it seems to work.
They all know it if they're in Sunday school.
Yeah, we teach it in church. You need to sit down and gain some self-control. And our son Cody would be so aggravated that he would like squeeze his hands till his knuckles were white, but it gave him somewhere to put all that energy that they're about to freak out with. Gain some self-control. You need to take a time out. You need to tell me what you did and what you're going to do to correct it. That teaches our children to internalize it, and that way we don't have to keep reminding them. Let's say your child comes to you and they say, hey Mom, I forgot, and there's like a school trip tomorrow, and I need $14, and it's 9 o'clock at night, and I know, but I gotta go and I gotta have it. Can you run up to school for me in the morning, please, 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 Mom? There is nothing wrong with saying, I'm sorry, but you're just not gonna have the freedom to do that. What? What's the matter with you, freak? I'm sorry. How long have you known about the field trip? A week, but what does that matter? Well, then you had a week to tell me, and I'm sorry, but I guess you're going to stay at school tomorrow. You're not going to have the freedom to go. No, you're the worst parent in the world. But you know what it does? It teaches our children responsibility. That's what it does. It teaches our children. I guarantee you, next time they go on a field trip, they'll be there on the first day they get the paper. It only takes once. But we as parents feel guilty, and I had to stop her a few times from jumping up in the morning and hitting the bank, and running to the school and bailing them out. because moms want to do that, I understand, but it doesn't teach them responsibility. It doesn't teach them to carry their own responsibility. Oh my God, I forgot, I got homework due tomorrow, and I got to run to the school, and it's closed, and it's in my locker, and God, you got to bail me out. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have the freedom to do that for you. What do you mean? It's your responsibility. Schoolwork's your responsibility. That's your monkey. Sorry. I guess you're going to get a bad grade on this one. Ah! Trust me, it doesn't take very many of those before your kids learn the response. If we're constantly bailing them out, am I going to go out and bail out my sophomore in college? No, I'm not. He's shaking his head yes. I told Caleb when he started college, I said, he was like, Dad, I need your help. I need you to do this, blah, blah. And it was starting to stress me out. I said, Caleb, I love you, but this is your education. This is your college education. So you need to take ownership of it. Well, I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? I'm like, you need to take ownership of it. It's your education. And it clicked. And he's done a great job of taking care of his education. He's on top of it. He knows every book he needs. He's got his grades up. He knows where everything's at. And if I would have continued on in that way, I would have been burdened down with the responsibility of his college education. But I had to put the responsibility on him because he's an adult.
And we get the bill on the first day it's due. He remembers that one.
That's right. Hey, Dad, my bill's posted. But he's on it. He knows exactly where everything is. He knows he's got his school planned out. He comes to me and says, hey, I've got to do my classes. He gives me like a week and a half's notice, make sure everything's where it needs to be so I can, apply for my classes for next semester, da-da-da-da-da. Hey, Dad, I get fee courtesy. Did we do the fee courtesy? Did you get that? Because that's on me. That's my responsibility. So he's done a great job of picking up that responsibility and carrying it because I simply looked at him at first and said, I'm sorry, but it's not my education. It's your education, and you're going to have to take ownership of it. And he did. If I would be out there, and I see it, I see people out there from the East Coast with their juniors in college haggling with the counselor and the, resident manager because they don't like where their kid's living and stuff. And it's like, my gosh, they're 21 years old. When are you going to let them grow up here, people? That's sad to me. And a lot more that happens because we don't want to teach our kids responsibility. So, what did you do? What do you need to do to make it right? A reflective timeout. It's a controlled time. It's a controlled opportunity for them to consider their thoughts, consider their actions. My 4-year-old didn't clean up their room. I asked them, do you have the freedom to go outside? Yes, Mommy. They go outside. I walk back there. The room's not clean. Perfect opportunity for a reflective timeout. Hey, I need you to come in. Have a seat at the table. What? I need you to take a reflective timeout. And I need you to think about what did you do and what are you going to do to correct it? No, you need to think about it. You did something. You said you had the freedom to do something and you didn't have the freedom to do it. So you need to go correct it. And they will sit there and they will process that even at 4 years old and they'll come up with it, trust me. I didn't clean my room. That's right. You didn't clean your room and you told me you did. I'll go clean my room. All right, go clean your room. You do that once or twice, they've got it. See, the key here is parents, we want them to come to the place of when they get ready to leave the room, they have the moral, reflective attitude of, oh, I know Mom's going to be at the door, and she's like the outside police, and she's going to ask me if I have the freedom to go out there, and I don't until I get my room clean, so I'm going to clean my room. Do you see that? You don't even have to ask them. And that's when we know it's picking up. That's when we know they're keying in on it, when they become responsible for their own actions, and they start doing things on their own without being prompted. You know they're internalizing it. They're getting it. It's soaking in. Because you walk back out there, you walk back in the room, and you're like, oh yeah, they did clean up the room. Sweet. Or they're back there playing, and you hear them tell their brother and sister, hey, help me. We can't go outside until we get all of our toys picked up, remember? And you're like, yeah, they're getting it. It's clicking. It's sinking in. That's the key. That's where we want to get. We have to remember one thing we don't do well as adults is moral processing. We don't. We're not real good at it. It's a learned trait. It's a learned skill to morally process things, and neither do our children. So we need to teach our children how to morally process and how to morally think about their responsibilities. We ask our kids to take a reflective time out, and I believe it goes along with the scripture of be still and know that I am God. It's a time where we let our children sit there and think about what they've done, what they need to do correct it. We talked about how we don't really want to send teenagers to our room because they're like their own sanctuaries. A good rule of thumb, people are going to ask, how long of a timeout? Well, I kind of suggest, or Sharon and I kind of suggest, like a minute for however old they are. So if they're 4, within 4 minutes, after 4 or 5 minutes, they're probably going to be like checked out and ready to go crazy and throw a tantrum. If they're 10 minutes, if they're 15 minutes, but a 15-year-old is not going to need 15 minutes unless they're just stubborn and rebellious and they're going to take their 15 minutes. So we want to do the reflective time out to get out of lecture mode. I'm just telling you parents, lecture mode doesn't work. How many times has Daddy told you not to do that? It doesn't work. I'm telling you. They don't listen. They tune you out, and it doesn't work. Children learn quickly. They want to be corrected and taught that there are boundaries in life. Believe it or not, parents today are taught not to teach your children there are boundaries in life. We're taught today to let our children roam free, to find themselves, to express themselves, that it's limitless, you can go out and do whatever you want. The truth is, children appreciate boundaries. They may not understand it when they're young, but they do appreciate boundaries. It actually helps them feel safe. If your children have boundaries in their lives and they know that what's acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior, it makes them feel more safe than if it's just unlimited, no boundaries. Mom and Dad, it's up to us to teach them boundaries, to teach them moral truths. So here's what you're going to do. We're going to give you guys monkeys for your kids. You're going to take your monkeys home and you're going to assign something to the monkey. You're going to say, we took a class with Mr. Rick and Miss Sherry tonight. There's a new sheriff in town. Things are about to change in here. You guys are going to learn how to be responsible. Here's your monkey, and here's what we're going to do with it. And here's the catchphrase. If I ask you, do you have the freedom to do that, you better think about what you didn't do, or what do you need to go do. So you take your monkey home, you assign it something to that monkey, age appropriate. If you're working on courtesies, do courtesies. If you're doing personal responsibilities, if it's cleaning your room, taking out the trash, if they have chores, whatever it may be, I'm going to ask you, do you have the freedom to do that? And that's all I'm going to ask you. You may do like we did. Our monkeys had like a monkey jail shelf or whatever, where if the monkeys were up there, the kids would know, uh-oh, I forgot to do something. And then it gets to the point, like Sherry said, where you just walk around the corner with a monkey in the hand, and they're like, I got it, okay, I'm on it. I hate that stupid monkey. So assign the monkey something, explain this process to your children, make sure they understand it, make sure they get it, make sure that they have an assigned task to it so they can start internalizing it. Because if they don't, it's not gonna make that much sense to them. Now there is a story we heard in one of the parenting classes where a lady went home to her 14-year-old son, and without saying anything to her son about this class, about the monkey, about anything, her son was getting ready to go outside and play basketball with his friends, and she looked at him and said, do you have the freedom to do that? And she hadn't done the class or anything with him, had no clue. And he goes, well, yeah, my room's clean, and I did my chores, and my bike's put up. Yeah, I think I do. She was like, all right, well, have fun. That was without teaching him anything about the class. Just that phrase, do you have the freedom to do that, instantly made him stop and think about his own moral responsibilities. I thought that was pretty cool. She hadn't taught him anything. So it is in our children. It's in there. They do get it. It will click. I think it's something that God has designed on the inside of us to be responsible. So you might even try it if your kids are old enough. Just blast it on them. And when you go play video games, do you have the freedom to do that? Huh? What's the matter with you? You crazy? No, you have the freedom to go play video games? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Just want to make sure. Your children want to learn to internalize responsibility. They do. They want to know that they're responsible for their own things. They want to know that they are growing and maturing, and as they grow and mature, the responsibility grows with them, and the expectation grows with them. Does anybody have any questions or anything about this? The thing I love about Growing Families International is it's so practical. And I'm telling you, when you go home and apply these principles, they work. We have used them. They work. Yes, Jason?
Is it wrong when they're older, 14, 15, 16, throw them all together?
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be throwing monkeys. Put somebody's eye out and it's all downhill from there.
I think one thing you have to remember too is that you're making an investment. This is kind of like an investment. You're investing in their lives and their hearts, and you may not see too much of it now, but the goal is, at the end, that you're going to see all the hard work you put into it. And it really is worth the work, because nowadays parents are going here and there, and they both have to work. And I think that's kind of some of the problems, is that no one's taking the time, because let's face it, it's hard. It's hard to work and raise kids and everything. But I think it's just so worth the investment. It's so worth the time to try to teach them just little principles. And because the ultimate goal too in the end is that we as Christians are trying to show the world what Jesus looks like. And we can do that with our families. There's no better way to show the world that today than our family. And what's our family look like? That's one of the greatest, I think it's the greatest testimony.
Yeah. So a couple more just little things here I forgot to mention. If your kids are still in the discipline phase, the 0 to 5 years of age, they're going to more so hear you do not have the freedom to do that, right? You're not going to ask them at that age, do you have the freedom to do that? You're going to train them in that discipline phase, that 0 to 5, 6 years old. You're going to more so say, Mommy, can I go outside? Well, we don't have the freedom to do that yet, right? And you might even have to start instilling that in them a little bit. We have to clean up our room first, right? Mommy said, we pick up our toys when we're done with them, remember? Yeah, okay, right? And then that will actually transition into, believe it or not, that little 4 or 5 year old will run out and say, Mommy, I'm going outside and I have the freedom to. They will, trust me. They'll pick it up. They'll get it. Another thing is, the key is, us as parents, as we're teaching them, do you have the freedom to do that, will carry into, as an adult, do I have the freedom to do that? Because as adults, we have to ask ourselves that, right? We have responsibilities. We want to go on vacation. We have things we want to do. So we have to ask ourselves, well, do I have the freedom to do that? Is that going to be financially, responsible to do that? Or am I going to put us in a hole? We ask ourselves that. Whether we realize it or not, we as adults ask ourselves, well, do I have the freedom to do that? Let's see, I'd like to go hang out with the guys Friday night, but I already promised Sherry I'd take her out and we do something. I really don't have the freedom to do that this week, right? We do it, we just don't understand that we do it. So the goal in parenting is the transition from, do you have the freedom to do that, to where when they get older, do I have the freedom to do that? Because we all ask ourselves that, we just don't realize it. So that's one of the things. Teenagers, as Jason brought up, be ready for conflict. It's just going to happen. Teenage years are conflicting years. It's just the way it is. One of my favorite TV commercials of all time is the mom and dad who are standing there at the bedroom door, and the dad's like, I hate you, I want to move out, I don't want to live here anymore. Bam! And he slams the door in the mom's face, and he's like, how was that? Was that pretty real? And she's like, yeah, I think we're ready. And they're getting ready to deal with their teenager, right? So they're practicing. I love that commercial because it's so true, you know what I mean? I hate you, I want to move out, bam! Right? Teenagers, there's going to be some conflict with it. You're going to say, do you have the freedom to do that? And they're going to be like, I don't care if I do or not. Oh, no, yeah, you do. You do care, trust me. Because then you move into the disciplinary process, right? If it becomes just full-out rebellion, if they know they need to do something and they don't do it, then it's rebellion. And then rebellion gets dealt with through the disciplinary process. All right, any other questions? Any other insights? Anything anybody wants to add or anything? Do you guys get anything out of it? Think it'll help you? It works, I'm telling you. You remember the monkeys, Caleb? Were you?
I was thinking about the time with your hands together, because that was awful.
Yeah. Well, it would make you gain self-control. You didn't
Oh
like
yeah, that was awful.
You didn't like it?
No.
But it made you gain self-control. All right. Only 10. So what's everybody gonna go home and say? What's your monkey repellent? You have the freedom to do that, right? That's gonna be your new favorite phrase. Do you have the freedom to do that? Do you have the freedom to do that? And I would like to see somebody do it with their teenager without even talking to them and just see how they respond. Break it out on Sam. Hey, I'm going to play some video games. Do you have the freedom to do that? What in the world are you talking about?
My video game, of course I've got the freedom.
Oh, no.
No, honestly, he would, Rick.
Oh,
And
no.
he argues, he gives you an argument and it's my video game. I guess I did it.
Oh, no.
I know.
I'll pray for you, Miss Sue. That's her grandson.
Yeah,
He's a good boy.
he is.
All right, we're going to close out in prayer, and we'll let you guys get back home. And don't forget your monkeys when you leave, so you can take your monkey home and explain
I'm
to
so
him what's going on.
excited.
Yeah, I want to hear. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, we're going to get some more monkeys here.
I need another one for John for this. I told him, "Rob, you got your lunch ready?
I'm gonna borrow one for
Here, let me
Sean.
get this out first. Let me get that over.
Yeah, you better give her one for Sean, too. You can use it on Sean. Do you have the freedom to go on a motorcycle ride? What are you talking about? All right, let's pray. Lord Jesus, we come before you tonight, God, and we just thank you for each and every one of these parents and grandparents tonight, Lord. And God, we pray that you would just allow them to teach us Lord, the next generation. And God, we would be responsible to raise a generation of responsible young men and women, Lord, who would know how to internalize and, God, be able to walk in their own moral character and their own moral understanding. And that, God, they wouldn't just be submissive to us as their parents because of who we are, but that, God, they would learn to submit themselves to you and to your principles and to your standards. And that, God, it would guide them all the days of their lives. And, Lord, that as they grow and mature and, God, they bring up another generation, that they would be able to instill in the next generation the values and the morals and principles that we've instilled in them, Lord. God, I pray right now in Jesus' name for each and every one that, Lord, they would go good, that, God, they would be able to implement this into their families, Lord, and they would see the fruit of it, God, because we've seen the fruit of it. And, God, it works because it's based on your, Lord God, on your word, on your moral character, and your moral foundation. So, God, I pray for each and every one to have a safe week, a blessed week, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.